So ever since I made my videos criticizing the more recent Pokemon games, Sword and Shield, I've had a few people tell me to check out this upcoming Temtem game. It's an MMO that plays very similar to Pokemon. It's coming first to PC, does have full controller support on PC, but it eventually has plans to hit all of their consoles, including the Nintendo Switch. It launched yesterday at the time of this recording for early access, so not the finished product. I'd note right off the bat for people who are interested, there's a bunch of content still not accessible yet, and I think it's half of the Temtem planned for launch are in the game. But I spent the entire day playing it, so I had to make a video on it. Let's start with the Pokemon comparison, because I already see fanboys of this game now saying stuff like, what, just because you can battle and collect monsters makes it just like Pokemon? For one, yes, but it does go way further. The entire story, game progression structure is almost exactly like Pokemon. You start off as a kid about to leave home and begin their Temtem adventure. You customize your character. The customization options, I want to say, are pretty limited, but they do have shops in that where you can buy more clothes in that. Once you're done with that, you have to talk to your town's professor, who will offer up 3 different starters for you to choose from. After you pick which starter you want, you'll battle your rival with that starter and journey towards the next town to battle its its dojo leader, and continue to travel the world, going from town to town, battling all the leaders, while a big bad organization gets in your way at every turn. You can even catch shiny, Luma forms of Temtem that are extra rare and have unique visual appearances. Again, very Pokemon. Not saying that's a bad thing, or that there aren't differences that we'll get into, but let's be honest here. Heavily Pokemon inspired at the least. The most noticeable difference you'll see right at the get-go is the fact that it is an MMO, so other players are everywhere. This should calm down as the game goes on and people spread out more. Obviously, everyone is going through the same areas on day one, but there is a lot going on here. I feel like it would have been better almost to do like a WoW sharding type thing and only have a handful of other players on screen at once, and have the invitation system like they do to invite a friend over to play in co-op. It kind of takes you out of the experience when 10 people are clogged in the exact same spot because they're fighting a trainer or something like that. At the same time, I do want to stress, I do like seeing the world more populated, other people running around, just maybe not this many. In terms of the game's visuals, this is an indie title, a more budget game, and it shows. While I like the overall design of the world, the art style feels kind of cheap. Do note the game itself is cheaper too, though. It's $35 on Steam right now if you buy this early access. But yeah, the color palette for the world feels kind of flat to me. And the human characters, for instance, are very generic in my opinion. Sort of remind me of the Xbox avatars, actually. But at the same time, who really cares about them? The Temtem, just like Pokemon, are the stars of the show, and what you're going to be spending most of your time looking at. And overall, I like their designs. Just like any game that's going to have 150 plus creatures in it, there are going to be hits and misses, but I've already found several that I really like. And sticking with the Temtem, let's get more into the gameplay, the stuff I'm actually much more positive on. The standard matchup in this game is 2v2. That's how pretty much all of your fights will be, unless you encounter someone who only has one Temtem or one by itself in the wild. Even in Pokemon, I prefer the 2v2 format. I think it's just more interesting and offers up more possibilities when it comes to strategy. This also makes the co-op stuff easier to implement, right? Because the game's all based around 2v2 play, so you and your buddy can each have one Temtem out during fights. I didn't play any co-op myself yet. The servers were pretty unstable with this being day one, so I was just trying to experience as much of the game as I could before I'd get disconnected or something. I'll definitely try that out at some point, though. Also, the stamina system. This is probably the big change for people who are more familiar with Pokemon. Rather than having skills limited to a certain amount of uses, in Pokemon you'll have, 20 tackles, 5 fire blasts. Temtem just operate under a flat stamina meter, and different moves cost different amounts of stamina. Obviously, a higher damage move will cost more. And if your Temtem runs out of stamina, well, first, they may take damage based on how short they were on stamina for that last move. So if you were like really low on stamina and use a move that cost a ton, you're going to lose a bunch of health as a result. It shows you when you highlight a move before you use it, it shows you how much stamina it's going to take away, and if it's going to completely drain your stamina, it'll also show you how much health your Temtem's going to lose if they use this move. And on top of that, whenever you deplete your stamina, you're forced to rest the next turn to regain stamina, so you can't use any moves the next turn. Temtem can also faint due to overexerting themselves. This offers yet another layer of strategy in fights, as you have to carefully monitor that stamina and think about upcoming moves and if you're going to be able to pull off all the combos in that you may want to. You may decide to rest a turn and take some damage in order to be able to pull off a massive attack during the next one. I absolutely love this system. I think it makes fights way more engaging. I rarely find myself in Pokemon running out of uses for viable moves in fights, where here your Temtem can run out of stamina in 2 or 3 moves easily, so there's a lot more importance on it. And the actual fights themselves, they can be pretty tough. These trainers and the wild Temtem, they're not screwing around. I think what makes the combat even more engaging here is it seems even at a base level, like lower level Temtem, stand a better chance against higher level ones. You can have a level 12 Temtem out there against one that's 6 or 7, and you'll pretty surely beat him, but you probably won't get out of that fight without taking significant damage. Trainer Temtem seem to scale at a rate that makes sure you're not just breezing through them. In my experience, fighting like 3 or 4 trainers in a row without healing up took its toll on my party pretty much every time. So if you're used to having like a front line that just steamrolls everything in Pokemon, that strategy is not going to work as well here. You definitely want your whole party to be leveled up and expect to be swapping Temtem in and out of fights very regularly. Even catching Temtem seems more difficult than Pokemon. You get these little cards that act as your Pokeballs, and while I'm still early on in the game, there were a couple instances where I'd get the Temtem down to the last little sliver of health and still couldn't catch it, had to put it to sleep or something still to finally get it. In terms of the exploration, this feels, not surprising, like Pokemon, but good Pokemon games. You've got the standard route type areas with tall grass where you'll battle through a bunch of trainers to get to the end. Again, many of those individual trainer fights can be pretty tough. You've got this vial thing, I forgot what it's called, something vial. You get it early on and it gives you a full heal to all the Temtem in your party. Even if they've fainted, it brings everything back up to 100% health. The vial only has 1 charge, but it refills every time you heal your Temtem at, say, a Temporium. So you'll want to make full use of that to clear an area of enemy trainers without having to make too many trips back to town to heal up. I want to note I only got through to the first gym leader, which I'll say took me several times longer to get to in Temtem than it did the first gym leader in Sword and Shield, and that's with me pretty much rushing to get there in both games. And that has a lot to do with the fact that you have to first go find the leader, dojo leader. I think I called him gym leader already. But the dojo leader of the first dojo is being held captive in this tower nearby, so you have to battle your way up there, and once inside, you're dealing with an actual dungeon-type area that has several floors, winding pathways, items hidden all over the place, trainers positioned in ways that can be hard to see where they are before they stop and battle you, plus a boss at the end. That took me a while to get through, and once you save the dojo leader, you have to battle through the dojo, which has some light puzzle-solving elements using these pads that shoot you all over the place as you try to reach her at the very top. Of course, you got to battle students of the dojo the whole way. You get up there, you beat her, and she gives you a surfboard, which now allows you to explore the water areas of the world. This is the type of stuff I want to see from these sorts of games. More of a challenge. Areas that actually feel like you have to adventure through. That's what it's supposed to feel like, an adventure. Again, I've only been able to play so much of the game in one day, but from what I've seen so far, Temtem very much seems to be on the right track. I do want to stress, though, before I close this out, this game is an MMO, in early access. Stack on top of that, it's day 1, week 1 now, and there were a ton of issues I had with it locking up, being disconnected from servers, etc. I don't think that has as much to do with like the general game, just again, it getting hammered so hard with it just releasing. So you may want to hold off a bit before jumping in, even if you are interested, to make sure this stuff gets ironed out. I will say things did get better as the day went on, and the team had great communication with people on Twitter, stating when they were doing hot fixes, server restarts, and that. And yeah, this is just how things are with MMOs, honestly. I can't think of one smooth MMO launch that I've ever seen. So yeah, you may want to wait till things improve and kind of slow down with it being brand new. The servers are getting hit harder now than they ever will. These starting zones are more crowded now than they ever will be. And I also want to note, again, with it being an MMO, you never know how things will change with aspects like monetization. For now, they've said they only plan to add cosmetic stuff, no pay to win, which is good. But that could always change one day, just in general with it being an MMO as well as being an early access. The game could change dramatically over time, even before release, so keep all that in mind when deciding to make the purchase. But all in all, I like what I've seen so far. I do not plan for this to be my last video on the game. I definitely want to experience more of it and talk more in depth about it, but I wanted to get something out there for the people who are super curious. I'd say for $35, if what you've seen here interests you, if you're someone looking for an alternative to Pokemon, something that's Pokemon enough but does things a bit differently, you may want to check this out. Just again, you have to keep in mind that it is an MMO in early access, and even still, you probably want to wait till things calm down a bit. Anyway, with that, this video's a wrap. Let me know your thoughts on Temtem in the comments. Are you currently playing the game, and how do you think it stacks up against the juggernaut that is Pokemon? Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this discussion of my early impressions of Temtem. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and if you want to keep the conversation going, hit me up on Twitter @JohnnyZakari, and join my Discord, ChiGuy and Friends, link to both in the description below, and as always, thanks for watching.